Hello, everybody. We are back again doing recaps for the 2019 tournament. It has been a chaotic 2 weeks here since we've last done coverage, but we're keeping it going. And we're doing it with one, I think, in the popular opinion, and perhaps in my opinion as well. We'll see as we go back through these. Is probably the most popular week of the 2019 tournament. It's creative accounting. So this is, we didn't really have pure projection back in those days, but this is like a prototype of that kind of puzzle, where in order to get more material out of the input, you have to be more careful about how you do your projections and your purifications. And to promote that, this puzzle is uniquely requiring 12 products instead of the usual 6. And yeah, this is like the big metals puzzle of the tournament.
So, I think to get an idea of where a lot of the following solutions are coming from in terms of like the approach that they thought and how challenging the puzzle was considered back in 2019. This was, as RPO mentioned, like back in a time when purification was like not even really a word, and this whole idea of unclear metal ratios was simply not well explored. So
Yeah,
if you're looking at this...
When I was making this puzzle, it was like no one... Well, I'm sure it probably had been done somewhere somehow, but like I feel like I was the first to like just put this together and be like, I want you to do this as well as possible.
Yeah, like this is a pretty, I think, important puzzle for like the history of the like Opus Magnum community, as it were. Even if you ignore the fact that there is now a giant metal themed DLC out and this is part of the journal, ignoring those, this is still like, this is the puzzle that inspired like Amalgamated Gold Ring, which in turn inspired Critelium. The entire idea of an ugly metal ratio puzzle can trace its origins directly to this puzzle.
Which is funny because it actually has a pretty nice ratio, but you know.
It's actually not that bad. All right.
Yeah, let's get into it. What are we starting with?
We're starting with cost. Cost was actually the least submitted metric of this week by far.
Fair enough. There were more interesting categories. Well, yeah, I'll be a little subjective here. I think cost was a little shafted in this. We'll see something cool though. We will see something cool. I promise.
Yeah, cost was a bit shafted, to be honest. All right, we're going to start in 5th place with Stein FG. Coming in at 70 cost, 515 cycles. No, wait, area secondary. Not don't worry about the 515 cycles.
Okay. So Stein FG, also an old player, came in when the game started. I'm always surprised to see how many people joined the tournament late, but yeah, well known at, or fairly well known at being kind of good at cycles and or not cycles, cost and area, but. Let's see what he's doing here.
Okay, so we're just projecting the silver into gold and waste chaining the iron.
Using track to do it. Do you... Like, okay, I can probably anticipate that we won't be needing track, but I wonder... Like, do you even need to... Because you have both... Well, yeah, I think for what he's trying to do here, there is required track, but... Yeah. Seems like a decent, perfunctory... If you just started the tournament, you would probably make... And you didn't know much about Opus Magnum, you'd get a solution like this out.
Now, I think what's interesting about this puzzle in terms of cost is that I'm pretty sure hopefully not talking out of my ass here. I'm pretty sure all the solves use track. I mean, use a bonder. Despite it being a debonding puzzle.
Yeah, strictly speaking, you don't need the bonder, but...
But then you have a big access point issue because to do it without waste would require this thing. And this thing needs 3 access points, so you usually need like 3 hexes of track just to access it all. And by that point, your cost will already have ballooned out because you still also need this thing and this thing. So that's not really, purification is not really an option. So you need waste, and if you're going to use waste, subsequently you need a bonder for that waste.
Yeah, there's a world where I give disposal and people just dump it there, but it's not this world.
That wouldn't be very creative accounting then.
No, you gotta figure out how you're making your money.
All right, next up in 4th place, still at 70G, we have Jinyu. He shot it down to 16 area as opposed to SteinFG's 19 area.
Clean pivot.
So
I'm getting a feeling that there might not be any waste in this one.
I think there won't be a straight up waste chain. I think Jinyu is just a lot more economic about where the waste goes.
Yeah, those equilibrium hexes are probably being like the final location of most of this waste.
Yeah, I think that actually will be marking area. So interesting.
Or at least that one next to the Critelli. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I don't think Critelli's used actually. I think it's just a good Critelli. But one fun thing about, I guess, doing it this way wastefully, where you're throwing out iron, is that you don't actually need to throw out all the iron. There are, like, that iron there just gets projected. So some of it does actually still get used, which is, it helps get around that 12 product requirement without needing any more area. Like, this is some pretty intense juggling though.
Whenever I see juggling like this, I'm always impressed by it. It's just, like, I know mathematically it's possible, but much like the block sliding puzzles of yore, it's always exciting to see it just perfectly work out.
Jinyu, if I remember correctly, back when he used to submit for these tournaments, he always had a strong stomach for this kind of stuff. He was always very good at it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if his cycles count is like perfectly optimized or something like that.
Then, in fact, that might be relevant later this stream. Anyway, in 3rd place, we actually dropped down to minimum primary at 60G, starting with Feindeer.
Look at that.
And we're already no track required.
Half-axis bonder.
Half-axis projector as well.
And if you're looking at the top right or top left of the screen, you'll notice 628G. That's a lot. And we did kind of see a little bit of this with warrior forming and unforming with shadow cluster solve, which is probably why people are more privy to it right now. But still a very challenging solve to come up with.
There's actually a really funny mechanical development in Cost that happened years after this puzzle came out. I'll talk about it at the end when we're doing showcases, but just for those of you who are thinking about it right now already, Syrup Tech doesn't exist yet. So no one knew that you could do that, and it actually makes Mint Cost a lot easier for this puzzle. But we don't have that at all. No one comes up with it in 2019. So I'm not. Yeah. So without that Syrup Tech, you're just stuck with, like, how the hell do I half-access Bonder and half-access Projector? Which is a serious question in 2019.
Yeah, Feindeer here is creating this, like, zipper shape to make sure he can always get that last attachment disconnected, but it's very slow in how it happens, and you know, he's swinging through every single sector as he's doing it, so the area is just ballooning.
Does it loop? It does loop. There you go. Nice.
Cool.
All right. Shooting down through the secondaries. In second place, Mr. Puzzle. Coming down all the way to 31 area. So, the waist chain strat did not last very long. Now, Mr. I was about to call him Mr. Bonder. Mr. Puzzle does not use a bonder. He actually does it with the track.
Okay, I was hoping to see a solution like this. I didn't remember at all. But the secret of using a track and a single arm is that you can increase your access points by just going from length 1 to length 2. And that's what's happened here. With that additional access, you can store more waste and get more products out before you run into trouble.
Yeah, so we saw Stein FG and Jinyu use a length 1 arm on a track, and that gives you that arm can touch 8 hexes, whereas a length 2 arm on that same track can touch 12 hexes, and 12 hexes is in fact enough storage space to handle the puzzle without actually needing a bonder to handle all the waste. In fact, there's actually like a couple of hexes spare, I think.
Yeah, you could get at least 1 more iron there. Maybe 2. With some effort, but...
Oh, and there's like an extend instruction. Why is there an extend instruction?
This is what we call the proto-halt.
Yes, we have halt at home.
Finish the puzzle and stop.
Sure did halt alright. Alright, that leaves us already with first place at
Is it Pentapig?
it is not Pentapig. It is Shadow Cluster at 20 area. But we'll come back to Pentapig.
Okay. So we're back to being trackless, and we're at 20 area. Which I have a strong idea of how this comes out, but we'll watch for a little bit. Ooh, bonded gold.
Okay, so there's the iron waste. We're handling iron waste.
So, see that right there? Shadow Cluster bonded the iron to the gold iron pair, which before was very, like, he couldn't do that. You know, you couldn't just bond iron to iron because that has access issues. But by using the intermediate of the gold, which is supposed to be an output, he can actually keep his waste down and manipulate things as necessary and create those bonds to keep handling waste.
Because he'll have like a couple of iron pairs, or at least he's got one so far. There might be a second ultimately, because having just a couple of pairs, or it's kind of like building up slowly in chunks, and having just like a couple of chunks to float around is a great way to like reduce your area, because you don't want it all bundled up into one stick like Faindeer, and then your area balloons out to 600. This does let you get lower than Mr. Puzzle's idea, purely because it's a length 1 arm and length 2 arms have to swing around a lot, and this does not. But it makes handling the iron waste so much more annoying.
Yeah, we've output so long ago now, and Shadow Cluster is still just moving around, and finally a new input has shown up.
Still got a few gold to go as well.
Yeah, this is probably like a 1500 cycle solution, generously. We'll be here for a little while longer, but I'm very glad for what Opus Magnum players are putting up with, because like every single line in this instruction tape is hand coded, which I would personally not have the patience for without modern tooling, but early players were built different.
You see, I know I've always had a fairly strong stomach for it, but like this can get pretty intense pretty fast. It can be mentally taxing to just be constantly keeping track of all your waste all at once, hand coding everything. Because when you're like coding out in general in Opus Magnum, like a one arm with lots of instructions, you do have to do a lot of like mental visualization. And that's really annoying when there's all this waste that you're always constantly having to try and keep track of. And all the access and all the area hexes that you're trying to not clip. So this did come out to like 1342 odd cycles. But that's it. This looked intense just to program. Now, this is a great solve. Shadow Cluster has earned this win, but RPO was correct to guess that Pentapig probably would have won, because Pentapig did in fact make a cost solve, but didn't want to submit it. I have that solve, and it comes down to 15 area. He would have won by 5 entire hexes had he submitted. So,
oh my god.
I have for you the first ever 0th place solve ever in a tournament.
So he's just using track?
Just track, no Bonder.
Oh my god.
How does he get away?
I don't know if like...
Sorry.
I don't know if cost mains are looking at this and shrieking in horror, because it's like, we have 6 solutions here. They all use wildly different techniques. And it's just like, is this what we were capable of back then? Or is the spread of... Like, there's no spread in what we're looking at here. It's just colossal improvement after colossal improvement.
So you know when I said Mr. Puzzle using that length 2 gave him that like extra access points, and that was in fact enough? Well, it was a bit of a lie, because you actually still have enough with just the length 1 arm. You actually still straight up have enough access points.
Yeah, I imagine the difference between this and what Jinyu pulled off is that, well, Jinyu still had the Bonder, but
this is pretty much what Jinyu did, except even more intense, because it is actually less area. I think Jinyu needed 16 hexes, but you have enough with just length 1 arm on a track, and that would have in fact won Pentapig the metric. After the week 1 video released, I got a few DMs by Pentapig, who was happy we were covering this year in series. And hang on, I lost my Discord. Awesome. And he was mentioning to me that he actually gave me a few of his non-submissions, because unlike the other players, like Shadow Cluster submits for area and cost every week, Biggie very clearly uninterested in area, maybe cost, but usually just sticks to cycles and some. You know, most of the players had their pet metrics, but Pentapig is a bit of an all-rounder. And he probably stressed more than anyone else in this tournament about which metrics to submit for, because he's kind of good at all of them. Cost is probably his best metric, but he didn't submit for cost, saying there were a lot of options for sequencing with difficult to predict consequences for the cycle count, and he wasn't fully prepared to commit to exploring what the best way to juggle all the iron atoms were to get the lowest possible cycle count, thinking it would be a tertiary race. And he actually highlights not submitting this solve as his single biggest mistake of the entire tournament. And I'm not surprised. He would have won comfortably. But I think he was expecting more people to catch that this was possible.
One thing I would want to remark before we move on is part of the reason why he's able to juggle that waist so well is that the one arm he has full access for the whole hex of, like, as long as he's able to do input suppression, he can juggle Iron Atoms completely around the full hex of the first track hex and the full hex of the second track hex, which is why he's able to do it so perfectly. But yeah, I do apologize to Pentapig more than anyone else. I know he has very fond memories of this tournament, so I'm glad it's not been too negative for him, but he's quality in all these metrics, and I forced him to pick by only including 2, but look at that. Full circle of movement is what lets you do that waist handling. Anyways, let's see some categories where Pentapig did submit.
All right. So that was cost. We'll move on to the other small metric, which I'll set up momentarily. There's always that 30-second to 1 minute period.
Yeah. Set your clocks. Countdown. For those who are completely new players, this level is available in the journal right now. It's called Reclaimed Gold, because you gotta name your. There are some levels in the DLC that are not named exactly for the product, like Ex Materia and Savario's Transformer and such, but for the most part, the style guide on Opus Magnum is that you have to name a level after its product. So if you don't like the new name, that's just how things go sometimes.
That was one I think we were trying to save that name, Creative Accounting, but it did not pass the Zach sniff test.
You know, something about making a joke about Hollywood accounting practices doesn't really fit into alchemy too much, so it's hard to make an argument there.
Alright. Moving on to area. So, one thing that's interesting about this week is that it's the only week of the 2019 tournament where there were no, like, single submissions for more than one metric. Like, everyone who submitted 2 different solves. Which is nice for me, because I don't have to ruminate about whether or not I should skip the solve, because we don't have to skip anything this week. In 16th place, starting at 15 area, we have Chickens in the Attic.
Wow, 16 places. Nice.
Now, interesting, we're picking up where we left off, because you'll remember Pentapig's solve was, in fact, 15 hexes.
So there we are. Just do it with a piston.
But now we get access to a piston, which does help tremendously.
And instead of waste, just, use purification.
We get to fit a whole purification glyph now.
So here is the naive way to make the product out of the input. You just project the iron up to silver, and then do a purification onto silvers, and then you create gold. Very clean 1-to-1 ratio to what Chickens in the Attic is using. We'll probably see it again because it's wasteless, but we'll talk more about why that's not good in the summish. I don't even know what the summish metric is.
So I'm really glad you did this for this week. It's straight up sum.
It's straight up sum.
Straight up sum. This was no weights, actually just a pure sum week, and this is like also the coolest week to do it on, so I'm really glad you made that decision back in 2019.
Thank you, past me.
Sum's very interesting in terms of how you want to divide the work up. many options. But here it's actually it's somewhat straightforward how Chickens in the Attic is doing it here, because when you have access to both of the metal glyphs and the space to account for all the extra atom handling, you don't need to worry about waste at all. You get to, as he doing, he's projecting the iron up to silver so he can just purify the silver, and it's just a clean one input to one output.
Yeah. At this point, you wonder, but how can you save area?
Well, next up in 15th place, we drop down to 14 hexes. And a bit of a heads up, we're going to be at 14 area for a while. So this is B brick.
Could it be the whole time? Well, probably not, but... Okay. So Chickens in the Attic had one spare X that wasn't being used for something. B brick is now... So when you're pulling that product down, if you pull it down on axis like this, you can go straight into the debinder without any extra hexes, whereas Chickens in the Attic had that extra hex. So that's why this solution's better.
You do still straight up get access to that purification glyph, which means... Oh, hang on. This is actually doing it slightly differently. It's not just a clean 1-to-1. Interestingly, okay, the math is more complex here. So an iron does get projected up to copper, and the copper gets purified. Okay. The silver sometimes gets purified, sometimes gets projected, interestingly. Now, I'm bringing up all this math because cycles is the secondary, so how efficiently we're outputting here will very much matter.
And in area, it's a much more of a trade-off to do a fancier ratio because now you're adding all this extra manipulation. I would not be surprised if we saw a solution coming up that does a 1-to-1 ratio, but just does it more efficiently.
Yeah. Which is interesting because the trade-off is between... The trade-off is if you do a clean 1-to-1, you are in fact doing the purification backwards. And if the DLC has taught everyone one thing, it's that the glyph of purification is very inefficient at handling metal, and you will in fact lose metal the more you use it. And that does tangibly affect your cycles count because it affects how much gold you're actually able to generate per input in the first place. So, therein lies the rub of the secondary. Next up in 14th place, at 14 area, is Sextuple Flop.
14 for 14.
2 pistons.
Heck yeah, I like this layout.
Nice, and there it is, clean 1-to-1 input to output.
2 pistons. The number 2 piston can't reach all the way over, but with a small assist from arm number 1, it's able to handle most of the pivoting. Yeah, it cleans out. Honestly, I do think, even though I really like the look of this layout, probably a better place to put that second arm, but one of the challenges with purification is that because it's triangle shaped, there's not, it's hard to align your 2 arms in a way that can touch the hexes as needed. This is one way. I would not be surprised if we saw more.
See, for me, looking at this, the arm placement I would question would actually be arm 1. It's kind of in the middle of everything, and as a result, whenever it wants to get anything off this debonder, you see, even here, it has to go, like, around, because arm 2 can't just extend the rest of it back into its input slot, so there's a lot of this, like, rotation around arm 1, specifically because it's in the middle of the entire layout.
Yeah, the exchanges just become so much longer.
That's actually what makes this layout novel in the first place, is that arm 1 is just plonked right here in the middle. But yeah, it goes against general area praxis to put your piston in the middle. Usually the pistons are like at the edges of the layout or whatever, so that you've got like a bit more space to just like extend, retract, or rotate, or pivot, or whatever. Alright, in 13th place, we have Stein FG. And the cycle count did not drop by much. Only 9 cycles it looked like it dropped.
Okay, so we still have arm 1 in the center there. This is one of the other offsets you can have between the two arms that can still access all of purification.
It's actually very similar solve to the last solve.
Yeah, I think just the difference in angle is saving some cycles on movement here.
Yeah, and it's not height 3, so it doesn't look as pretty. But you can see arm 2 actually can just do a straight up length 2 swing, and that speeds things up just a little bit. See, whoosh.
Yeah, if you're ever trying to do area, 1, focus on the primary. The primary can usually get better, but 2, see if you can get length 2 swings and such into your layout, because they help change the game a bit.
So interestingly, we recently had a debonding area puzzle in the 2026 tournament, and I did rather well in that puzzle. And one thing about debonding area puzzles is, unlike most area puzzles, you don't have to work out the hard bit at the end. In fact, this puzzle, it's a very non-traditional area puzzle because there is no one true hard bit, because the debonding at the start here is actually pretty straightforward. Putting the input in conjunction with this bonder, it's actually really straightforward to just like bring it in and just pivot it across, and you just don't eat up any extra hexes at all. You'll be seeing this like a lot of the time, if not the entire time. It's actually still just the purification math in this puzzle, which is the point of difficulty. But it does mean you don't have to work out some insane super pivot at the very end, 300 cycles deep into the solve, which is really nice. Makes it easy to think about. At least if you have my brain, makes it much easier to think about. In 12th place, we have Matter Monkey. And this time, the cycles do take a big drop.
322. Ooh. Okay, yeah, so we don't have a arm that can touch the center silver atom, or at least not immediately. So arm 2 pulls it in, and then pivoting happens by arm 1. And you can see that now that there's more space between the two arms, they can do a lot more work and more quickly.
Now, I like how well these two arms work together, because one neat thing that you already pointed out is that I can point out hexes that, like, if I take out arm 1, arm 2 can't access here, it can't access here. Arm 1 plays a very important role in that. And arm 1 has a few hexes of its own that it can't access at all. So the division of labor, as I like to think about it, is very clear. Arm 1
and you can see that in the instruction tape as well.
Yeah, true. True.
Yeah, very good solve.
Pretty clean, actually. We have many solves better than this. In 11th place, we have Kyojin Desu, shooting down to 301 cycles.
Oh, they're right next to each other. Is this the first 6P solve we've seen?
I think it is.
Is this 6P? Yeah, I think this must be 6P. I don't see
or at least 12p, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, anyways.
Interestingly here, Arm 1 does a lot of the work here. Arm 2, after it gets like the debonding pivots, can just kind of chill out until purification happens.
Yeah, so they're getting the silver promoted very quickly, which is probably why this is faster than Mirror Monkey, but the division of labor is way worse, so you could imagine that something could improve there.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because as you mentioned, the division of labor is worse, but the glyph placement is what I would say is better than in the last solve. Here, the projection glyph is like neat, like deliberately placed so that Arm 1 can just grab, rotate, drop, grab, rotate, drop. And that's why silver comes out so quickly in the first place. Also, I don't know if you're getting that, but my Opus Magnum started clonking a bit. Alright. Hopefully it's not a problem. In 10th place, we have Tempo Spire. Whoa.
277.
277.
The gold output's right there. So that helps with the resetting. And yeah, I think this is just I think Kyojin Desu just had the gold, like more opposite of the purification. So this is just able to do that all a little bit faster.
Yeah, this resets very quickly. You can see as soon as Arm 1 drops its purification atom, it just one big swing over and it waits one cycle for, I wonder, you could straight up do this, I reckon. Oh no, I just tinkered and it worked.
Oh man, that's so rare. Poor Tempo Spire.
You hate to see it. Anyway, what is that eventually? That saves like 12, that saves 11 cycles, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that just saved 11 cycles. Let's see if it mattered. Next up is SGS in 9th place. No, it did not matter. Okay, you get that one off, Tempo Spire. Whoa.
248. Okay, so we're splitting up the pistons again.
Ooh, now we have different purification happening. This time we're actually doing it properly. Ish.
Yeah, so iron becomes copper. You directly promote any silver you find. And eventually you also promote the copper once it shows up.
So I said ish, but this is straight up the, this is the way to do it, right? What is it? 3 inputs to 4 outputs? No, wait. No, 2 inputs to 3 outputs. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah. Because you have 2 silvers and you spend 2 quicksilvers on them, so you're left with 2 irons, 2 quicksilvers. You purify and then you project the copper. Yeah, that's it.
You'd have thought I'd have that one on hand in my in my attempts to prepare for the stream, but I'm glad. Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure this is the ratio.
In my head, I knew it was 3-2, but you know, it's also been several years, so like I just quickly ran through the math.
I've had a bunch of other metal math going through my head over the last week.
Some of it easier, some of it harder.
I'm still not entirely sure what the deal with pattern metal is in terms of cycles. I don't know what's happening there. Apparently, if you enabled the projection glyph on that puzzle, the min rate gets nasty.
Yeah, basically the higher 3 metals are impossible to make if you don't have promotion, and because we disable any promotion methods in that puzzle, it turns out that copper, silver, and gold are all require proliferation in the same way. So,
God, I can just smell a future tournament puzzle using that one. Okay, so
it was nice. Actually, I'll talk about this in the next interlude, but yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll save it for an interlude. All right. In 8th place, we have Mr. Puzzle. 237. That was not much of a drop at all. Wait, was it? No, it wasn't. So, Piston in the middle again, actually. We've seen this layout almost exactly way back, but pretty much the main difference from that original solve from, who was it? Sextuple Flop or B-Brick or someone? Maybe Stein FG. But the difference between that and this is purely that Mr. Puzzle is doing the proper ratio of purifying iron instead, saving that Quicksilver for the valuable metals.
Yeah, so there you go. You can save about 100, 150 cycles. I think it was about 100 from doing it properly.
Which adds up quickly.
Yeah, because the ratio is pretty, it's not that hard to get that third output. And because of the product requirements, if you're doing 1-to-1, you have to make 12, or you're pulling 12 inputs. But if you're doing 3-to-2, you're just pulling
8, right?
Yeah, 8 inputs.
So yeah, by doing it this way, that's 4 whole inputs you don't have to pull to solve the puzzle.
Which, when you only have 2 arms and they're doing stuff all the time, that becomes valuable.
Alright, in 7th place, we have Empate. 215 cycles. It's still dropping.
Wow, what a layout.
This is a very different layout.
It's so fast, and then you just see it screech the hull as it delivers that gold. I mean, it's not a huge screech because it's only 2 pause cycles, but... well, 3 pause cycles, but...
Nice short tape loop, by the way.
Yeah. We can actually count that relatively fast.
I think it's 18 cycles tape loop.
Yeah. 18R.
No? It's interesting. Yeah, this is actually, we're going back to the inefficient way, but this is just insanely clean and it's a really short tape loop. And the division of labor here is almost perfect. Arm 1's got 4 dead cycles per loop. That's it. And a couple of those are like forced anyway. Like here, you kind of have no choice but to wait for Arm 2.
Yeah, it's absurd, but that gold location, that output is probably the best thing you could do for... well, maybe we'll see a better layout.
There's not like a better, for the way the glyphs and arms are located, there's not really a better place for this gold output. You could put it here, but I think that just like you lose 1 cycle and don't make anything else faster. Yeah. I think. Alright, in 6th place, we have Spectria Limina.
Spectria, which some of you may know from a different name if you were participating in the tournament, but she has since changed her name, so we updated it here.
So Spectria in particular was somewhat entranced by this puzzle's premise of metal math. So I'm not surprised at all here to see Spectria actually doing the math here properly. That will actually play a part in the cycles race as well, which is probably where the math gets most intense because you also have to do like your traditional cycles calculations on top of everything.
Yeah, you have to do latency in addition to rate. this whole like 10 hex, slightly elongated hexagon shape is very good for cooperation between the arms. Spectria has put in the 6P, which, fun fact, back in these tournament days, 6P was actually a big stumbling block for players, and something we wonder about if like we could avoid forcing players to do somehow. Nowadays we don't, but it just goes to show how things have changed a little bit.
There's also Spectria. I remember the very next year when Biggie unleashed Amalgamated Gold Ring on the community, Spectria went like absolutely nuts. Loved the puzzle, deep dived into Raid, and I believe was only beaten by Rolamni.
Sounds like a very likely outcome when it comes to rate cost.
Pretty much, yeah. Coming into this, I don't know why, but in my head, I fully believed Rolamni was around back in 2019. It's kind of weird that he wasn't in my head.
I mean, yeah, he's a very strong player, but I think he was all in on instructions when he was around.
Yeah, I think he was just still straight up doing nothing but instructions, wasn't he?
Yeah, one of the innovators in that field.
Alright, next up though, in 5th place, Shadow Cluster. Now, the observant viewers who've been keeping up with this series so far may have noticed that up to this point, Shadow Cluster has won every metric he has submitted for, including cost, which I did just half an hour ago. This is the first metric in which he does not outright win. So his streak finally comes to an end. That's a 5 metric streak. I'm not sure that has been matched at any point to date, although it's a bit weird with the metric, with the way the metrics now work. Like, if you, like, nowadays there's only like 2 metrics per puzzle, and in that sense, no one's matched the 5 metric streak, but yeah. Suppose it was different back in 2019.
Yeah, but on a counterpoint, how many puzzles has Shadow Cluster lost by a whole 4 places before? I don't think it commonly happens.
One thing that's often said about Shadow Cluster on area specifically is that he rarely loses on primary. So,
now,
seeing his name turn up in the 14s, it does raise a couple of question marks over whether or not it goes lower.
Like, this is pretty fast. 179. 2 is a circle arm, which is only to its benefit, whereas in previous solutions it was kind of an albatross.
Here, actually, I like the way Arm 1 works perfectly with Arm 2, because it's in fact Arm 1 that pulls initially and is just able to like... See, Arm 2 can actually wait a while for Arm 1 to do its thing with the purification. It has like, it can just set up that purification for Arm 2. Arm 2 doesn't have to worry about it at all. And this works particularly well when you're trying to do the ratio properly, because that's like a perfect storage hex. Arm 1 can just trigger the whole thing. Arm 2 doesn't need to worry about it until it's copper, at which point you're projecting anyway. So Arm 2, despite being in the middle of everything, Arm 1 still has great access, and Arm 1 also gets complete access to projection. Arm 2 is not overloaded with things to do here. In fact, Arm 1's limiting if you... Well, actually, they're both somewhat limiting, but Arm 1 is the one with the nearly full instruction tape.
Yeah. This kind of triangle axis where Arm 1 is mostly just working on 2 sectors and extending and whatnot throughout is very efficient for this puzzle. I'm not sure I described that well, but...
I knew what you meant with the triangle thing, because Arm 1 only ever really... it's mostly functional in just like, you can cleanly draw the triangle in which it usually operates in, not counting the output glyph. because yeah, this is like usually this is its like box really, and that's kind of like I'm willing to bet Shadow Cluster deliberately placed the glyphs to fit within this triangle construct for the purposes of trying to make sure Arm 1 was useful despite not being in the middle of the action like Arm 2 is.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a layout where he put the gold next to the output so that you could get that length 3 swing, but I doubt it actually improves things at all.
The problem is I don't think Arm 2 really wants to output there, because Arm 2, see if I like run the solve. It's like, that's way away from the projection glyph is the problem with that.
Yeah, it would have been cute if it was useful, but...
Yeah.
Anyways. So does anyone do faster than this?
Yes. In 4th place, Winter 1703. 177 cycles.
That's less than that was what, 2 cycles?
2 cycles. I'm pretty sure
yeah,
it was
okay.
literally just 2 cycles.
So we're at a latency race here. Or is this a 6p race? This might be a 6p race. Ooh. I bet Shadow Cluster was mad about that. No. Okay, no, I just misread that.
Man, what the? How many
But
does
why
it
is the instruction tape so long?
So it outputs it outputs 5 gold per tape loop. Huh? 5.
Okay,
so it projects a copper right at the start. So it projects an iron right at the start. But then it doesn't purify iron, it purifies copper. So instead of getting 6 outputs every 4 inputs, it gets 5 every 4. No. Yeah, wait. So it pulls...
Yeah, let's watch this one more time.
Yeah, sorry, it gets 5 outputs every 4 instead of 6 outputs every 4, which is what the ideal thing does. The ideal ratio is. So it's very slightly worse, but the trade-off is you get to do this really super quick, neat projection on the iron that is in the middle of debonding. You get to sneak in that projection, and that ends up being well worth the hit to your like output ratio.
Yeah. Can we go to the product just before they get to completion? So we're basically looking at the second gold that comes out. How quickly does that get made? That's pretty efficient. So Winter's doing the same loadout where one of the quicksilvers goes to the copper, one goes to the silver. And because you debond that silver so quickly and promote it almost, well, actually directly, that's about as low latency as you can get.
So this is an interesting... Sorry, you go.
I wouldn't be surprised if the rate is worse than Shadow Clusters, but it's just barely better enough that on latency saves, it's able to take over.
So here, there's the 11th, and the last one is literally just the silver that will be spat out. See, there's a pain point where it's taking a while, and it's at this point where you have 1 silver and 1 copper on the board. And here, you see, the gold can't really be outputted yet because there's a bit of junk in the way where where all that projected iron eventually gets purified into gold. And that's kind of like the one pain point where things slow down. It only happens twice in the entire solve, though.
Yeah, so you backload all that trouble. You only do it twice. And
that happens right... It happens pretty much right... Sorry, I'm cutting you off again. That happens pretty much right after it outputs like 12. which is
Also, don't worry about it. You're in Australia, I'm in North America. We just got some ping.
See, with all the Opus Magnum I've streamed, like, over the years, it is always kind of in the back of my head, like, am I gonna, like, speak early enough so that the delay doesn't end up cutting someone off or not? It's an imperfect art.
Yeah. Oh well.
In third place, we have Rithaniel at 14 area, 172 cycles.
Whoa. Oh, this one's 6 feet.
No.
No. So for all that time we spent glazing child cluster's triangle, it turns out that once again, it's better to just have the pistons spread apart because there's less movement overall.
See, in my head, it's still, those last two solves were still a bit, like, worth glazing because these cycles were very tight. I think Shadow Cluster was only like 7 cycles slower than this, like, total, and, like, missed out on 2 placements. So it was an extremely tight secondary race up at the moment.
Yeah, no faulting that. I think if you go back to the earlier solves that were doing 1-to-1, we're seeing a lot of the same layouts show up, but you know, Winter's and Shadow Cluster's layouts were wholly unique.
I think about what I really like about this solve and why it's kind of like cause Shadow Cluster had this like insane like piston offset where it could access everything, and Winter 1703 had a really creative approach to the ratio that made projection really nice. This layout just looks the most natural to my eyes, at least at this point, at the 14 area mark, because the purification glyph as well as the other glyphs are all very neatly placed. Arm 2 does not have to do much to get that iron projected, and the cop is right there, and projection in particular, because this glyph is returned to at like 2 or 3 different points in the process, and it is smack dab in the middle of everything. It is next to projection, it is purification, it is next to debonding, it is next to an output. It is in the middle of everything. And so at no point when you're projecting are you far away from anything you need, whether it's the silver that you're storing either on the whether it's the copper that you're storing on the purification glyph or the silver that's still on the debonder. It's all nearby, and there's just not much rotating or finagling, as I often call it.
Yeah, and one thing I'm noticing is that Daniel is making 4 products per tape loop, so it's a little doubled up there.
Oh, is he?
Right? Am I missing
Nah.
it, right? Or sorry, 3 products per tape loop.
It's just a clean, it's the 2 to 3 ratio that's just like clean once a tape loop.
I'm surprised. The tape loop feels so long, but I guess it's just...
I'm a huge...
No, it does make 4 per tape loop.
Does it? Hang on.
2, and then... Oh, no, I'm just... Okay, I'm wrong. I'm cool.
3, 6. Yeah, it's 3. It's 3 per tape loop.
I guess I'd have to look back at the other ones to see what was going on, but this feels long to me for some reason. Anyways, does it get faster than this Sorflax?
No, it does not. This is the fastest 14 area layout, which is why I was glazing the last few on the cycles measure, because this is about as fast as it gets on cycles. We drop down in area. It goes down to 13. In second place, Pentapig. And oh, we're back up to 544 cycles. Now, what's happening here? We don't need the second piston after all. We don't need a track or anything. You can just straight up do it in one piston. What the hey?
And why is there a purifier there?
And why is there a purifier there?
This is all so cool. You know, there are things that you can never anticipate about how a tournament's going to go and what's going to happen. But the fact that we got to see fairly unique tech for every single metric has always impressed me about this puzzle. I didn't anticipate any of it, and what are we doing here with this area solve? Well, there's so much waste, and it'd be really nice if you could just decrease that waste count by just a little bit. And the purifier is used for no other reason than to create one more space to work with.
It is quite literally a single-use purification glyph. And there's just barely enough space. There were no atoms to spare there. That was airtight.
Yeah, if you look at the ending, you had your 4 irons and the copper. You could not move any more product.
And it only makes one. It makes a few more for the purposes of recording the GIF. It will. It is about to crash. If I keep playing it, it will. There it is.
Rest in peace.
So, insane big brain play here. You use the purification glyph exactly once because you juggle barely enough waste. And you don't need the second piston because you don't need full access to the purification glyph because you never need to touch this one. So, and you can do everything else just fine. We made a big song and dance, and it always gets brought up when it comes to the purification glyph. You can't access the whole thing without either a second arm or without track. You either need the track or you need the second arm. We saw it a lot in cost. That's why you didn't see it in the min cost solves, because a single arm on 2 hexes that you needed, in cost, you need to do it this way. But you could just fucking ignore that fact. Not surprised so few players came up with it, but one other player did, and in fact got Pentapig on secondaries, and that was Jinyu.
$480.
480.
The king of secondary optimization.
I talked earlier about how good he is at waste management, and it didn't matter so much in cost because he missed min primary, but he did not miss min primary on area, so it mattered very much.
I will say, I feel like because these two players, Jinyu and Pentapig, had good solutions at cost, Pentapig in particular, he was probably well prepped mentally to find this purifier safe because they did all that waste handling. They realized, wait, there's just 1 hex difference, and then they probably got those neurons together and finally made this solve.
I'm not ashamed to say I would have completely missed this if this was a 2026 tournament puzzle. No way would I have caught this.
And yeah, as far as this layout goes compared to Pentapig, it looks like Jinyu has the purifier knocked on its side, so the traditional way.
Yeah, this is definitely the better layout of the two, and the reason is Pentapig kind of did it like this instead. That's kind of more or less Pentapig's layout functionally. What Jinyu does here, because waste what this means, this layout, is this isn't really a storage hex. This is only where you output and nothing else. And you only really get that one spot, that one purification spot that's out of the way. Everything else is in the way. The way Jinyu sets it up, after purification, this is still out of the way, but he can just permanently store an iron here as well. This is also out of the way. It is not in the big, the main loop where all the work needs to be done. So this is also, like, this never needs to be rehandled ever again. Pentapig only had one of those atoms. Jinyu gets two. So he just gets to do less juggling.
Yeah, the 6 hexes around your piston are prime real estate, and Pentapig did not use that. So that's the big difference maker. Now, it's a huge logical leap to even get to this layout, so I'm not faulting too much, but Jinyu took it one further step, and it's well deserved that he got this victory.
I do believe this is still to this day the area cycles record. So 7 years of eyeballs and no one has bested this solve at all. Not even in a micro optimization sense. Also, with Pentapig's 0th place cost solve, it's kind of sadly ironic because the reason he didn't submit it was because he was so worried about the cycles count, and the modern record is like 4 cycles faster. It was just like a tiny little micro optimization somewhere, and that's it. He otherwise had the God solve.
Wow.
So, 2 metrics down, 2 to go. This is our second interlude.
Okay, so minor fun fact about pattern metal. I really wanted it to have iron instead of copper in the outputs because I ran some numbers and
That's
I'm like,
right.
oh, this gives it a really nice rate. But Zach is like, why not just do copper? It's better and blah blah. And I never actually ran the calculation on copper because I'm like, oh, the metallicity would be terrible. All the numbers would be wrong, blah, 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 blah. But little did I realize and had to go back to the drawing board just to tell him, it's like, I'm not going to be a laughingstock for creating a terrible rate puzzle for the last, which Universal Solvent took forever to be solved, but I didn't want it to be nonsense. But I realized you can't actually get copper through promotion. So because it's only proliferation, it becomes this 10 inputs to 1 output thing. And I'm like, all right, fine. We'll do copper instead of iron. But if you want to imagine a version of pattern metal that's a little harder, a little more interesting for rate, you can mess with that version where you replace the coppers with iron. If I remember right, it has a clean ratio, but
so do you
much
actually
more
know
wrong.
what happens to min rate if you kept the copper but also enabled projection? I heard people talking about that doing a really weird thing to min rate.
yeah, that makes min rate awful. When I ran the numbers, it's not clean at all. I don't remember the exact fraction, but I really didn't want some rate monster to be the final puzzle. I wanted people to analyze it and see a path to make something clean. So if that was an option, I would have fought harder to do something else. But it turns out, actually, no, it's not even possible, so no worries.
I heard Crazy Bot joking about it. It would have been Critelium 2.0 if projection was turned on, or something to that effect about it being that bad of a rate monster.
It is that bad.
Whew.
You can get funnier ratios when proliferation's on the table because of its nature of being every 3.
In general, if you're trying to make a metal puzzle with a terrible ratio, one thing I found in Critelium, when I was trying to make Critelium, it's really easy to come up with a horrific ratio if you just make the output really big. And Pattern Metal has a really big output.
Oh yeah.
No, that was actually the design goal, was to try and keep the Critelium output as small as I possibly could. Because, like, it would, if I just let myself use a 12 atom output, I could have done some nasty stuff, but that wouldn't have been interesting. That just would have been tedious.
Well, now with proliferation, you could probably make Critelium even smaller and get the same rate, but
I am
We'll let the
curious.
figure that out.
I am curious about what. Well, yeah, there will one day be the next rate monster, and it will probably have a proliferation glyph involved. And I'm just like, I want to see whatever either Kazian or a future tournament designer does in that design space.
I'm excited.
All right. Moving on to some. Now, for most of the weeks of the puzzle, for most of the tournament weeks, some had a weighting to it. Either, area was buffed or cycles cost was buffed. Not this week. It was just pure sum goodness. And this was before sum was really like catching on as a metric. This tournament was in kind of responsible for sum being measured and catching on as a metric in the first place. But it wasn't clear that back in 2019 that's not like you don't have to weight it or anything. But here it still wasn't weighted, and I'm really glad because it's a really cool sum puzzle. In 8th place, we have Kyojin Desu at 330.
But we only got 8 solves? That's alright.
Only 8 solves.
Well, Kyojin Desu definitely got the area down, which a sum theorist would tell you not to do first, but
This is actually, because you're handling a lot of individual atoms as soon as you debond it, area is not the biggest problem in this sum puzzle. So this is very much a you can ignore area puzzle. This is also a good puzzle for, of course, one question you typically have to ask is whether or not hex arms are overpowered or overrated. I would put this firmly in overpowered because hex arms are usually a very relevant feature in some. We will be seeing them later on. They work really well if you have to handle a lot of individual atoms, and that is exactly what you have to do because you do have to debond the entire creative accounting product. You are outputting individual gold. There's a lot of individual manipulation here. So without really clarifying whether or not it actually happens, I will suggest that you will be seeing hex arms a lot. This is as for this solve, this is not like this is not a terrible solve the puzzle solve, to be honest. I think it's just there's a lot of track here. You don't actually see many arms rotate at all. There's just this one arm one doesn't rotate, and it's like other than that, that's kind of functionally it. Like arm 3 and 4, those rotations aren't actually really like meaningfully rotating anything. So it's all just like it's all translational movement, and some you typically want to be doing some nice stuff with rotational movement. In 7th place, we have Tweedledee.
Tweedledee showing up. This is like the classic sum solve when you're trying to minimize your arms, but you can't get all the little operations to work right, so you just keep adding more track. Yeah, I feel like I've made many first drafts for some that kind of look like this, where it's like, I just want to do the operations efficiently. Let me put in some track to make the job easier. SGS really not caring about area by building up that waste chain, instead just promoting as much as possible.
Yeah, see, stuff like this makes me really want to just tinker the hell out of it. Like, my brain's going, there's got to be a better place to put this arm, length one arm. You got to get rid of this track right, kind of thing. That's exactly where my brain's going. But I mean, this is very much this looks a bit brain power optimized, with the waste chain being essentially I don't want to deal with the iron, and I can just output gold if it's just one silver, one quicksilver, and I don't really care about the rest of it, so I'm just gonna do this. And you know what? It is convenient. It is actually pretty convenient to just chuck the rest out and output gold.
At least he promotes the iron so that you compact the waste a little bit.
Okay, moving on. And 6th place, we drop under 300. We go down to 295 with Winter 1703. Ooh, a piston. Ooh.
And the hex arm.
Ooh. A hex arm though. I like the hex arm.
Karmic balance. Okay, I really love the swing on number 4. Probably
A length 3 swing.
across a hex arm.
Okay, so
only moving the other way.
And there's arm 2 as well. Also does a nice big swing to meet up with arm 4 in the first place. So this is the first solve that clues you in to how good the hex arm could be. It is useful. It is already useful in all 6 directions. It is grabbing the debonded atoms. It is projecting. It is purifying, and it is outputting. This did not need to be a piston. You could have just.
Could have just. Come on, Winter.
Come on. 5G. Right there.
You're letting Zorflax be the host here, and you're giving us this solve? Why don't you come out?
What were you thinking in 2019 before I joined the community?
But no, it's a very good solve, even though there's this in there.
So this, no waste, but we are content with the inefficient purification. There is, interestingly, 2 projection glyphs, because that way you can grab the input quicker. And you got to admit, it is pretty convenient to just project all that iron straight away, because that's all you really need to do with the Quicksilver in the end, and from there, it's just a matter of purifying and outputting. So there's good logic here. There is very good logic here. Make no mistake. In 5th place, at 291 some, we have Panic.
Panic. I think we saw him last week as well, but
Yes.
Maybe even since the start. But
I think he was also there in week 1. Yes. Yes, he was definitely there in week 1. I remember his solve now.
Yeah. I do it now as well. He had the super cool. Anyways,
Okay, so one thing I think about increasingly often these days when I'm doing some is arm count. So one thing that, first of all, he didn't use any track whatsoever, so mad respect for that. Track is expensive. There are 5 arms though. There's a lot of arms doing a lot of work here.
yeah, it strikes you immediately as too expensive.
That being said, he didn't have to use any track whatsoever. He's also only using 1 projector. We saw the last solve actually need a 2nd projector. So there are cost cuts elsewhere that make this not so, like, immediately over expensive. I believe this is doing inefficient. No, it's not doing completely. No, it's doing what Winter did in Area, where it purifies copper. So you're getting almost the clean ratio. You're getting like 5 outputs every 4 instead of 6.
Yeah, pretty good. I wouldn't be surprised if the best solve could use this usefully, but you do wonder.
All right. I don't remember if the 2019 tournament had a secondary for some. The way I put it into my parser is that there was no secondary. I suspect that might have been how you did it, but maybe not. In any case, my parser says there's a tie for 3rd place, is what I'm trying to get at here. So first of all, at 289, we have M-Pate.
289. That's 17 squared for no one that cares. Okay, so 1-to-1 using the hex arm beautifully. A lot of area, but as established, does not matter.
Yeah,
Wow.
even that huge, really area intense length 3 swing only results in a solve that comes to 27 hexes. Like even like you can just do that length 3 ass swing.
Yeah, it's like, why not? And really, it's
I'm
only
surprised
length
he couldn't
3.
think of like there wasn't a way to like do a length 2 swing, and like this looks like it would just work, but
It probably does.
it probably does. Hang on, it molecules like that. So actually, that's actually still a length 3 swing. So okay, I take it back. This is not like it's not super clear. Arm 3 is probably in the spot where you want to. Yeah.
Yeah, I think MP made it length 3 just because arm 3 was doing some good work where it was, and he didn't want to.
Actually, I think this might have worked.
That.
Or no, wait, this might have worked. But it's not actually as easy as it looks to improve that area count. Is my point. And also, this actually does this makes a pretty good argument for the inefficient ratio for some. Because, like, some is about nothing if not, like, convenience, really. Sum's like a good metric to be lazy for and to just... Because, like, the best sum solves, it's always said make the puzzle look easy. So, lazy approaches, like doing, like, an inefficient... ratio or whatever are actually like well justified in some because it means you have to move shit around less. And a great case in point here is that all the projection is handled it's done out of the way early, and the 2 bonded silvers just get put into this pipeline where arm 2 just like chugs them along the purification train, and arm 4 just outputs, and that's all she wrote.
Yeah, the jobs are very clear.
If you put like the input like here or something, like you can't do this. If you put the input here, oh wait, you can't put it there. Never mind. Okay, this is tinkerable. I rest my case. Area matters.
Anti-tinker.
We need the anti-tinkering back on. All right. Also in third place at 289, Pentapig. 190 G. 73 cycles, 26 area.
2 places different.
That is, I think, the most expensive sum solve.
This is probably doing the full kibosh.
Yep.
Yeah.
It is fast. It is, no, there's a reason it still justifies its spot on the podium because it is fast. 73 cycles is pretty insane for this puzzle, for a puzzle with 12 outputs like this.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you have to pay attention to in sum is like, I'm sure that this solution is actually probably too expensive, but because there's 12 products, you have a natural increase in those cycles. So every time you choose to slow down your solve, you're adding a lot of cycles, and sometimes it's worth it to have that incredible speed.
So the thing in particular that this solve commits cost to that most others wouldn't, not only are there 5 arms, one on a track, one a hex arm, there is also on top of that a second projector. The idea being, this the left part is the part of the machine that will actually try and handle the iron as efficiently as possible. And arm 2, once everything's debonded, is just the projection of the silver. So arm 2 actually is like very conveniently located. Works well with the debonding and handles the silver part of the input like very nicely and easily. And all this like exorbitant spending is really mostly on the left part here, where the iron is actually handled efficiently so that Pentapig can grab less inputs to solve the puzzle and get it all down to just 73 cycles.
Wow.
So there was some...
ju-
Sorry, you go.
Just for people's records, when we get to the end of this, Biggie did win the tournament, but the difference in points is very small. So you can look at a solution like this coming in third, and just wonder how history might have been a little bit different. But anyways.
And the other thing was, back in 2019, we had metric points, and some is literally never decided on primary unless there's a first place tie or something like that. So the metric points always matter for some, whereas if it's a big secondary race in cost, then the metric points don't kick in at all. Cost is like Pentapig's best metric. And the area sometimes can be also a secondary race, so the metric points may matter, they may not there, but not that much, whereas they will always matter in some, and they will often matter in cycles.
Yeah.
In second place... Oh, sorry, let's keep going.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
In second place, at 284 some, we have Rithaniel, who's having a great week.
Fantastic job. Wow. This feels the most modern sum solution I would expect.
Oh, I have the sum 4 solution on hand. That will be a modern ass looking sum solve.
I hope so.
It does not feature in 2019 though. I believe it was made by Kazian years later. Anyway, this solve takes a different approach to debonding. So arm 1 just kind of clips off the iron, and that gets sent to the purification corner, and the rest of it is just slapped on to the hex arm. We output and we store that quicksilver. And hey, look, we've got the purified copper, and now we can just cleanly output everything else.
Yeah, with significantly less machinery, Rithaniel is doing the 2 to 3 very, very effectively.
Yeah, so this is just a clean way to do the 2 to 3 is how I would essentially phrase it. Arm 3, I really like Arm 3, how it synergizes very well. There's a lot of handoffs and communication between Arm 3 and Arm 2, and it's a great justification for this unique debonding method. This Arm 1 debonding doesn't really happen in any other solve. Very cheap. 120 is cheap as hell.
Yeah. And it still is 105 cycles or something, right?
What was it again?
No. I think that's the resolution messing with me.
I think it's higher than... Yeah, it's high. It's 136 cycles. So Pentapig's was 73 cycles for comparison.
Almost twice the speed, but much less cost.
Way less cost, and area didn't really matter that much. In first place,
as noted,
at 271 some, Biggie Mac 42.
She steals it.
She steals it. Biggie, I always thought was the best at these fast sum situations. This is, you might notice, back up to 150, a bit more expensive, but we kept it under 100 cycles this time at 150. And I mean, I did just joke about area not mattering, but there were that's in the low 20s, has to be said.
Yeah, so I would be surprised if modern sum is not also a 3-arm solve, because you're just able to do everything with those arms.
So
I think Biggie's just using an extra debonder here.
I'll show it later. I don't have it. I mean, it'll have to be after the interlude. The modern sum record is just this, but programmed differently. I think the one main difference is the projector's here or here instead. So Arm 3, does like it kind of it synergizes better with how Arm 2 works, and it cuts down the cycles count by like 20. But otherwise, it is just this solve. So this has actually stood the test of time. And
Nice.
I always loved this hex arm. This is probably the best hex arm I reckon we got. So kind of the way, so Biggie actually commits to a second debonder, because what this does, Arm 1 can just cut, it's kind of like what Nathaniel was trying to get at with snipping off the iron, except the division of labor here is a lot cleaner, because Arm 1, after snipping off the iron, is free to just throw it onto the purification, which is out of the way, and the entire rest of it, which is a silver and 2 quicksilvers, all debonded by Arm 2. Does a fair amount of debonding, it does most of the projecting and all of the outputting, all in just like a couple of rotations apiece. So
What I'm hearing is before Biggie was a area main, she was a sum main.
So true. Man, she should try cycles sometime.
Well, maybe we'll see that next.
Speak of the devil. Yeah, I'll show you the slightly rearranged sum record in.
Oh, you have it on hand right now?
No, after the interlude. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay. 3 down, 1 to go.
Cycles. So, one of the things about not being a actual rate puzzle, even though it had rate ideas in it, is that you still have to worry about latency. And look at that silver. 3 D-bonds on it? That's so expensive. You could almost tie it up with the iron that you have to purify.
It'll actually be fun going through all the modern records, not least of which because now that this is a journal puzzle, we could these will be like vanilla game main game records that we're breaking down essentially.
There's a video series someone could do. Not me, but
it's actually not too dissimilar to thoughts I've had in my head about like things to analyze and make videos on that aren't tournaments.
I was watching a Goodbye Galaxy streaming Opus Magnum, and I was convinced that I'd be extremely bored just watching him fuss around, but it's almost kind of magical because he just kind of jumps to different parts of the solution, and you don't know what he's planning because he's just kind of saying, and maybe, and but like, then you see him create a working machine out of it, and it's just like, yeah, this man's actually good at his at what he's doing.
One thing that I firmly reckon is that like, I think watching like a really good player like Goodbye Galaxy just play the game is actually viable. Like people don't really stream this game very much for the reason that you're just watching someone go like, what if that doesn't work, and it's just really annoying because like it's the typical puzzle game syndrome of you want to backseat them. But if you watch watch Goodbye Galaxy or someone who's like really good at the game just play the game, like, and watch them like have that, like, they look like they're doing the same thing as the random streamer, except they just like find some really cool like pivot or whatever that like someone who isn't as good wouldn't find. They would actually, like, I reckon that's actually viable. I reckon like you could have like a Goodbye Galaxy stream the game and just play it, and it would work.
Oh, there you go. There's your career, expert players. Do not turn this into a career.
Terrible career advice. All right. With cycles, we're going to be starting at 59 cycles. So, yeah, Pentapig's Sum Solve came at like 73 cycles, so we're taking a slight drop from there. And, oh, I just remembered, I'm going to turn the resolution back up. Alright.
Zoom mod back in the day.
I can still zoom out. It's just that if I turn the resolution up, then this is just like higher resolution.
Yeah, it's the default.
Yeah.
Okay, so for the first time, we get to see a track loop doing those debonds as fast as possible. Every category up to now is trying to be more conservative with that, but Brick is showing how. We don't want to waste time on that. We're just gonna get those 3 debonds out and do the rest.
Now this time it will be a point of criticism that Brick here is projecting iron. Speed being the name of the game here, you really do this time want that ideal ratio as often as you possibly can.
Yeah, there's no reason not to do it.
But nevertheless, that is a big input, and the throughput will be pretty demanding, especially with all the gold that will be flying around and all the individual atoms that need to be handling. This is a difficult cycles puzzle. In 11th place, we drop down to 40 cycles with sextuple flop.
Soon we're getting into double pipelines.
Whoa. Yeah. Nearly no
guess.
track.
So it turns out great optimization for pulling your inputs faster. 2 pipelines. The creative accounting input is the wrong shape to pull it off on a track loop, so you don't need 2 pipelines, but 2 pipelines is the natural way to approach this.
I like how this is a very visually obvious 2 pipelines, like there's just a clear top bottom.
Yeah, there's some interaction, or no, that hex arm does not interact. It looks like it might interact, but never mind.
There are some cycles, if not also rate puzzles, where sometimes the pipelines get really intermingled and it's very visually unclear, like which is what pipeline and how many there are or how long one goes for. So I like this by contrast.
It's very schematic.
It's also period 4. And it's a minus instruction that turns up first. Nice.
Sextuple flop. He was the first one.
The original. In 10th place, we drop down 4 cycles to 36 with chickens in the attic. Oh, check out that instruction tape. Nice.
Oh, that's a brick. So again, we're doing 2 pipelines. It's perfectly symmetric this time. It's that sextuple flop that had more variation. And we're saving latency because everything's much closer.
Alright, so we're still doing inefficient purification here, which is why this isn't like... You might look at this and go, oh, this looks like min +3 or something. No, it is not min +3. It is min plus like 20 or something.
Yeah, you might be able to get a Pareto point out of doing something like this, but it will not get you to the bottom.
Alright, it's not min +20, it's like... I don't know, what's theory min on this puzzle? I didn't work that part out before we streamed.
Should we do the math live?
Probably not. We probably should not do the math live. I'm like, I want to say like 1920, around there.
I believe it's 21, but
yeah, I could believe that. So I don't have it on hand though.
It's 21, and I have all the math locked in my head, so don't ask me any questions.
Nice. All right, 21. All right. Next up, we drop 7 cycles actually down to 29 with SGS.
I assume we're going to have good, the good stuff.
This, I believe, is the good stuff. Now, you can essentially split this into 3 different pipelines. So you have the purification pipeline where all the iron will go. And then you have 2 separate top and bottom gold pipelines because this is pulling the inputs in 2 different directions. So what will happen is the iron will immediately converge on this purification glyph, and the copper will immediately just get like sent down the projection train. Whereas the gold, the silver from the original silver from the inputs gets sent either through the top or the bottom.
Yeah, so there's a lot of exchange here where you have already finished copper or gold taking its time getting to the output. But the slowest part, the 2 irons purifying and projecting twice, that's very quick. So that's a point in SGS's favor. But you can just see how much more complicated the machinery has gotten as we've created that additional output per 2 inputs.
Actually, I think I could just leave turtle mode on for the rest of this metric. I think that'll just be nicer.
Yeah, they're all going very fast with a lot of moving parts now.
That's a sick track loop, by the way. I believe that's a...
4 arms on was that 10? 9?
10. Alright. So, yeah. So, probably the main, like, point here of inefficiency. If I just, like, count the amount of regrabs we have to do here. This is 1 regrab. 2. 3. 4. 5 regrabs.
That's a lot.
There's quite a few regrabs. As we move on, we drop down 2 more cycles. In 8th place, we have Tweedledee.
The number of track loops are increasing. We're at period 8, one of my favorite periods to be in.
Period 8's nice. Period 6 is also nice.
I do like period 6.
Okay, look at how fast things fly real quick.
Yeah, so Tweedledee has a very similar idea to SGS, where those irons are pulled together very quickly. He does a little bit of extra work on the upper pipeline because it goes first, and the irons just come together, becoming copper, and that copper is projected on 1 glyph, so it comes through very quickly.
Yeah, compared to...
result,
oh, sorry. Because compared to SGS, Tweedledee's is like horizontally shorter, if you can think about it that way, which just means there's like less regrabs straight up between the gold. There's only like 2 or 3.
less distance, less regrabs. I mean, that's not strictly true, but it's a good rule of thumb.
Oh, bit choppy. Bit choppy in it. Alright, next up, also at 27 cycles, we have Matter Monkey, which comes out like 65G cheaper. This looks mostly symmetrical. Let's play it full speed real quick.
It doesn't even feel much cheaper, but
Not really. Ooh.
I think there's just fewer glyphs. I mean, and probably fewer arms, but...
There's definitely fewer projection glyphs at the very least. Is that projecting iron? It is projecting iron. But not all of it.
man. Monkey's just creating some waste out there.
Wow, dude, some of it is just straight up tossed away.
So this is probably one of the reasons why this is cheaper, because he's not doing the full pipeline and he's instead improving on the latency quite a bit. That those product losses are made up for.
Yeah, this absolutely, like, this really cuts down on latency by doing it in this, like, by doing this inefficient purification. In fact, it's not even purification. There's just no purification whatsoever. We're even tossing out Quicksilver at the bottom. How interesting. So this is projection only, and you can tell there's only like 2 regrabs total. Other than that, I think that's yeah, +2 latency. That's it.
Nice. I always try to think of like, what would this look like in a modern tournament? And would this solve hit top 10? Or probably not there yet, but this is a decent solve.
With the submission numbers Karzion's getting, I wouldn't expect this to make top 20.
Yeah, I could see that. In fact, the fact that there's not good, we're at what, 27 cycles?
Yeah.
No, it could probably still hit top 50, but
it was insane that one week 1 puzzle. You had to get min +1 area to make the top 50, and even then there were some min +1 areas that did not make top 50. Alright, I nearly settled for a min +1 solve, actually. Hilariously. Even though I went on to take the cake. There was a point where I'm like, I'm not going to think too hard about area, I'm just going to take a min +1. Thank God I didn't do that. Anyway, in 6th place, we dropped down to 25 cycles. The Tempo Spire. It's somewhat compact.
oh my god, and there's still no purification.
Still no purification.
The waste handling is a little bit cleaner here, but he is using bonders plus track.
I find it hilarious. You can the fact doing it projection only forces you to chuck out Quicksilver as well as iron. Like if you're chucking out, yeah.
Because you do project iron to get some gold, but because you're projecting 3 times, by the time you get to the end, it's just like, I don't need this Quicksilver anymore. I just need to get it off the silver.
Also, there's a really cool near miss swing. Hang on. So, peep this silver atom currently being held near the top. And it's about to swing straight to the output glyph. And, whoa, that's close.
Wow.
I also really like this ARM8 piston. That does, in fact, output a couple of irons. Not all of the iron is being wasted here. So it's actually ARM7 does the first one. And this is hilarious because now it's a double near miss. And it has to like gyrate between the 2 projection glyphs before... Whoa, that's a cool non-collision.
Yeah, that's really cool. I would have been satisfied doing that.
Alright.
And you know what? We're getting close to that stated min of 21, which I am holding to until proven wrong. So it's worth it to do it like this if the competition of the level of competition is where it's at.
In 5th place, still at 25 cycles, Lars Dahl, who only beat the previous solve by 15G.
And only submitted to cycles, apparently.
And 1 pipeline. Kinda. No, not really one pipeline. That's not strictly accurate.
One pipeline, two directions.
There's one debonding station initially.
And he's doing it the good way.
He is, in fact, purifying iron here.
I'm impressed this gets cheaper. I guess the all the time you spend handling waste and getting those irons projected can even out, and
He's definitely cutting cost here at the start. The fact there's only like really 4 arms handling most of the debonding before it gets taken to the 2 trapezoid loops. A lot of translational movement cuts down on rotating here. There are a few choice rotates anyway here though. Arm 14 is doing a really nice rotate right through all this track loop and atom stuff to get the iron purified. Other than that, there's all the gold is outputted through translational movement in 3 different directions. Clean.
yeah, I like how he gets this all done here. It's very, very clean.
In 4th
Put
place.
the Patelli in good spots, so.
Ooh, that would. Oh, look at that. That was. Oh, look at there was a spot right there. You hate to see it. God, that's such a good spot for it too. Oh,
Anyways,
heartbroken.
Ellie himself is heartbroken.
In 4th place, we do drop down another cycle to 24 with Spectria Limina. And, whoa, piston track loops.
You love to see it.
Whoa, that is a big swing. You're swinging, whoa, twice right through everything. Oh, not that time. Whoa, there's some complicated stuff going on in here. Hang on.
Yeah, so as mentioned before, Spectria got obsessed with this puzzle to the point where she was still obsessing with it after the puzzle was already over. So in many ways, what we're looking at here is just the start of getting something even faster. And you can see it has a lot of machinery to make that happen.
Yeah, this won't be the last time we see Spectria doing cycles for this puzzle. There will be another one on hand. Yeah, this was. I imagine she was a little too far off mint for her own taste and thought I could do better. Given, you know, a more generous time frame probably kind of thing. God, there are some gnarly swings here. Whoa. Purification is right in the middle of everything too, which is kind of nuts because
How does it not collide?
yeah, right. So let's have a look at the first purification. So first of all, that's just like insane. None of that collided in the first place. And now that the iron outputs drop, the iron drops right as this big input is swinging across, and that actually looks like it phases through the iron and the quicksilver, but it does not.
Yeah, because they're all consumed in time, and then the copper gets promoted and goes out. But wow.
It actually has trouble outputting towards the end, funnily enough, because all the gold is kind of like ready at the same time, somewhat.
Yeah, you need parts of it to be ready even faster so that you can get your latency gains.
Yeah.
Which is probably part of the reason this solution must have been frustrating, because it's like, oh, I have all the gold, but I'm output limited.
Yeah, you can see here on output, on cycle 20 here, there's like all this silver like could be ready in 2 cycles at most. But it takes 4 cycles to actually get to the end of the machine. Because it's all just like, yeah, all the silver has to pretty much wait. Also, whoa, those last few cycles were choppy. Alright, I'm gonna move on.
3 more people.
In 3rd place, still at 24 cycles, Faindeer. And the cost just took a nosedive. We went from 1200 to 685.
Yeah, so where Spectria had several track loops all working together, Faindeer has the same thing, but it, or yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think Spectria had like 10 or 12.
Whereas Spectria's solve strikes me more as like a failed 22 or something along those lines. This looks like it was actually designed as a 24 cycle solve.
Yeah, I would expect that.
So once again, purification right in the middle of everything. All the projection glyphs are all clustered together kind of nicely.
Yeah, it's interesting because you want to get all those translational benefits because translation is nice. You can put into track loops pretty easily and move things around very well. And once you debond the input, it is actually very possible to do that. The only major challenge is that if you try to move 2 atoms in a triangle, you'll get a collision. But if you keep it down 100-degree movements, then 120-degree movements, it's one of the better ways to move atoms around in this puzzle.
And the reason I said earlier that this looks like it was actually designed as a 24 cycle solve, unlike the last one, is because you can kind of tell here in around the peripheries, around the debonding areas, Faindeer just kind of bakes in a couple of regrabs. Well, these are very deliberate. I'm just going to regrab here and eat the latency because it gives me a bit more time to clear out my gold. Just like that one extra cycle of, you know, weight that I can move to translate a key projection or an output or a debond here. And so the solve just kind of looks like it, like you won't see anything like the last solve where it's all clogged up at the end because everything's waiting the output. No, it is already, like, it is only ready on cycle 24 essentially. But that's because the regrabs give Faindeer a bit more time to put everything where it needs to be. In 2nd place, still at 24 cycles, we have Biggie.
Biggie did not take it.
Biggie
I wonder who else could possibly have done this.
Makes you wonder. So this has only come 545G. Not that expensive.
2 track loops. Also, I think 21 is wrong, but we'll come back to that.
Oh, okay.
This is shocking for it to be 21 or 24.
Yeah, wow, that is. Let me speed it up actually.
Vicky has a very good habit of coming out with a solution that clearly was hewn from a huge block of marble, but the statue that comes out is gorgeous every time.
So, what's really neat geometrically about this solve? The first input is a length 1 swing. The second input, that is a length 2 swing. So the debonders are right next to each other. The iron is right next to each other, and this is very important because now those 2 irons can both be swung simultaneously, both cleanly thrown onto that purification glyph. What it also does, because the rest of the molecule is also offset by 1, you can kind of reverse that. So this first swing is a length 3 swing. The second swing is only a length 2 swing. And so it rematches, and that's important because now they're all thrown onto that same debonder. And this is really nice because this is the bottom bit can just all be the projection part. So it's all just neatly translated, neatly outputted. That's a cool non-collision. The Quicksilver just swung straight through because that upmost Quicksilver, which is closest to the purified copper, can now also just be like swung across, and it's actually insane that those swings don't collide, which is really neat because now this copper can easily be projected, and that is also outputted cleanly.
This is like one of the things that is, I feel, often a holy grail in trying to do CGs, where the input forces dual pipelines, but you just do the right manipulations that you get back down to having a single pipeline situation. And Big E has outlined one way where that can work out perfectly. Because once you get that distilled reactive silver type product with the iron removed, you can just start translating that and put it into a track loop, and now you have a single pipeline handling everything. You do not often get to do this, and being able to discover it and put it into practice is awesome to see.
And this offset idea is really cool as well because it allows this whole debonding sequence to function with just like trackless arms that swing and reset. And if you had just like, if you were trying to get everything on this one debonder, you have to like go at, like, you can't just like swing onto it with the same swing every two, because this arm's already here and it's a swing, so you can't like, it's not a translational movement, so you can't really like do that every two. So you see a lot of people just like give up and make two pipelines, but here this clever offset means you have enough arms in the right place, as well as the offset actually being geometrically useful for the purification glyph and the debonding sequence later. You just have enough arms to actually make all these swings without any complicated translational track loop shenanigans. Like that absolute swarm of glyphs you were seeing in like Spectria's Solve, for example. Though it's difficult to criticize that because that Solve was kind of like trying to aim for a lower cycle count than this one was.
Yeah, I suspect we're probably going to see a cycle drop next, but I don't know. But this is hard to imagine as beatable on at its level.
In first place, still at 24 cycles, Panic.
Panic.
And he drops it to 510. Look at this.
Okay, so this is not merging the two pipelines at all.
No, what it does, it sneaks that copper, because it worries about purification right here at the start, and this copper gets snuck in to one of the projection pipelines.
Wow.
Just one very, very key swing. This arm 6 has the space to do this. And there is, in fact, enough time to re-grab that one gold. And the sequencing works out so naturally. And this is a really cool geometry because we're going back to the two pipeline debonding thing. But one of the Quicksilvers from the bottom pipeline actually gets like also swapped over with its own length 3 swing that doesn't collide into anything. Arm 13 here just coming in clutch here. Because that copper does in fact need to be projected twice, which is why it can also be re-grabbed in the first place. And all this happens around the silver Quicksilver pair that gets thrown in here.
You know, it's so surprising to me that it's fallen from the collective memory that Panic won this. we can see the 2 latency that is missing from the solve as we look at with the regrabs. But this is so good. Like, this is the same thing of like why Panic did so well in Unwinding, where he just, there's a certain way when you solve a puzzle that, like, if you believe certain things are possible and just keep looking for that geometry, you can clean up something very well.
I can't believe this worked. This whole trying to sneak in the copper into your existing pipelines. It, like, I don't know, like, if I was trying to, like, theorize about how to make this, I would have thought, nah, that's too audacious. It's just, there's too much shit flying around. No chance I'm fitting it in. It's just, it's so cleverly sequenced. Like the regrabs are all, like, they work perfectly. Like, you couldn't regrab on any other cycle at all. And even just some of the swings and, it all just clicks and fits in together so perfectly.
Yeah, I'm impressed. When I was looking at Biggest Solve, I would have been surprised if anything could make it better because of that one pipeline stuff. But I guess there's a lot of setup to all that, and if you just embrace the 2 pipelines and find this great geometry,
there's only 16 arms. That sounds really low. I'm pretty confident Biggie had more than 16 arms. Hang on. I'll quickly go back. Biggie's Biggie's 545. Actually, so it was still pretty tight. Panic only got it by 35G. 2 extra arms. Yeah, that's 2 extra arms is worth 40G. So that pretty much was the difference.
Yeah, there's like 1 track difference as well, but
yeah, Panic uses like a single track extra. It might be a bit more complicated than that. I'm willing to bet Panic used less projection. Yeah, Panic only needed 2 projection glyphs, which lets him use more track. Yeah, there's more track here. Yeah, but that's offset somewhat by 1 less projection glyph. You could also count the amount of bonders, but I think we've compared the 2 solves quite enough.
yeah. Let's put it this way. Both of these ideas work really well. It's just 2 diverging kind of thoughts about how to make something cheaper once you decide at your cycle count. And it's merging pipelines or getting god tier geometry.
I don't blame you for thinking, yeah, surely the cycle count drops. No way Biggie gets beaten on secondary, because, like, it's insane that Panic put that one together as cheaply as he did. Okay, so we're back after an interlude that was definitely not at all long. Basically, we teleported here, just same as you did. So now that we've done all the metrics, we're going to have a look at what happened to this puzzle in modern times. I would like to start, because we just did cycles. We mentioned Spectria was not done with the puzzle. The deadline may have come and gone, and Spectria was at the time still on 24, but she was not done. It went down to 22 cycles.
Yeah, she got a 23 shortly after the week ended, and the modern solve is down all the way to 22, which she got a whole year later. Some things never leave your mind.
Okay, so there are some similarities to the 24 actually. The output swing is like the exact same from the 24. That did not change. So there are still some of the bones of the original 24 still here, but glyph placements and arm placements have been completely different. I don't know how she's managed to sneak in a piston and a normal arm on a track right in the middle of it.
I mean, there's a whole hex arm in the upper right there, and a second piston in the upper half.
Okay, so this one probably has some intense math happening that, I'll be honest, I'm going to struggle to follow along with. I do know that this, I'm pretty sure, is the only, like, 22 design that has been made. The CX record is just this, but without the hex arm, somehow. And CA is just replace as many arms with this pistons as he possibly can. And it was probably done like 12 times over by Jinyu gradually over the years. So that's why it's come down. That's why the cost actually has come down to 930. Willing to bet the original 22 was way more expensive than that.
Let me see if I can dig it up. Let me spend a short moment on this.
Alright, that's cool. Alright, so we're outputting earlier. We're getting all of our gold. We're getting a big point of difference from this to the 24 is specifically that a lot of the gold is able to be output earlier. So the earlier gold would probably have also had lower latency. So none of it actually is clogged up and waiting. Oh, there's some clean movement here.
I give up. Man, I wish we could talk in... Well, okay, there's a lot of things to think about here, but one of the modern developments in cycles theory, something that helped us crack a lot of the missing cycles in the last year, is the idea of double pipelining. And this isn't quite that, but if we watch that first input, it swung 2 sectors all the way back, and it's kind of handling that silver back there way away from all the action, but because the swing hexes are so good, it's still all been latency on handling that silver. That workhorse happening so far away from the action, I think is a very strong reason of why this is able to happen so quickly. And that the hex arm is doing it means there's a lot of savings in terms of resetting time.
One cool thing as well about this solved I'm noticing. So the input is quite far away from the purification glyph. There are some... So here, first one debonds. Arm 4 passes off. At the same time, the second one is getting ready. It has been debonded. Only needs 1 regrab. Whereas this one has already, that has already had its second regrab. But that second regrab kind of syncs it up a bit. And that iron just kind of gets swung through a couple of important projectors and the output, and is on the less busy end of the output and those projectors. Because this little field here near the input is where all the action happens, and the purification glyph is just barely snuck outside of that key field to a less busy area with some really cool non-collisions here happening. See, gold gets snuck in through right between where the iron would be swung through a cycle beforehand. That swing is a non-collision with a couple of other swings. So a lot of effort, I'm willing to believe, has been put into making sure the purification can go here. I believe Spectre's original solve, I don't know exactly where the purification glyph here was, but it felt like it was here was the equivalent. And I think that's also a key reason why this doesn't have as much trouble as the original 24 did. Because that's done out of the way, and it just gives the rest of all this projection geometry. There are... How many projectors are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 projectors all done. All gold's flying in at all sorts of different directions. Like literally 4 different directions gold is being input here from. And I also kind of like that, sorry, one more point. I like that the copper that does get purified it gets projected way off in the corner here as well, because it needs 2 projections, not 1. So it needs to spend a little bit longer on that phase. But it's way out of the way. So I really like that in terms of geometry.
Yeah, it's a theme in how, like, everything's just been pushed out. The bottom pipeline is hidden between these 2 layers of arms. The top pipeline is pushed to the side. And the purifier is on the left of the gold instead of to the right. All these things are making it so that getting those essential minimum latency swings to happen can happen very well. I made a claim earlier that min cycles might be 21. I don't think that's accurate anymore. We're still not going to calculate the latency here, but yeah, I'm fairly sure that this comes out to min cycles.
I hope so. I'll say that. There is, I think, at one point, iron does get projected just to cut latency at the end here. Yeah, you can see here the piston that's being buried under the hex arm and all the output. That is, in fact, iron being projected. And that's the last one that gets outputted? No, second last. Second last one that gets outputted. Okay, fair enough. Alright. That's the current cycles record. I guess I'll work my way up from the bottom, I guess. I have 2 versions of the HR record for some reason. This is almost definitely submitted by Silux Away. I'm willing to take a swing on that one without checking.
Yeah, after we did the unwinding puzzle, I just happened to come up with this solution. I don't know what drove
No, that's right. This was recent. This is very recent. No, I know it's Silux Away. Hang on, I do remember now. Thank you for reminding me, Apio.
Yeah. So, you know, driving a little interest into these old puzzles, but look at that. This must be min, right? There's no
oh, you'd think so. Actually, this probably is, right?
Yeah, it's purifying the irons, 2 projections. Yeah.
It's because it's grabbing once every 4. Like how the hell do you grab faster than that at height 3? I'm not really, like, you can't swing it. So that has to be min rate.
Yeah, so it's doing the right metal math, and you can't swing the output, so you have to push it.
And it's not wasting anything.
So, pretty good.
6 solve. Oh, minus instructions. Check out. Oh, you love to see it. God, what a thing of beauty.
Has he always been this way?
Has he always been this based?
We'll have to check back on the crazy epsilon solves.
Okay, so I actually made this myself. This is just a point that I'm about to make about this puzzle. So hilariously, if you look at every single cost record that wasn't the one that we showed earlier, cost area, every other cost record, and in fact a couple of other records, also use something that was not discovered in 2019, but a few years later, called syrup tech. The idea being, you have this like half-axis debonder and half-axis bonder. So you debond, right? And this appears to be left stranded, but you can rebond it because it is still sitting over the bonder. And here, if you just pivot it, like you've just split the input cleanly into halves. So you could just like, if your heart desired, you can just debond that, project it, and output it. Or you can, and you can just like waste chain this iron or something. It's like a really convenient way to do it at min cost. It's a really convenient way to do it in general. So here we have the GI record, just to demonstrate. Look, there's not that many instructions. Do I have an instruction count? No, I'm just gonna, probably like 20 or so, right?
You're playing mod, right? Just hit 6.
Oh, 33.
Yeah.
I forgot I was playing modded.
This voice change hilarious.
Is this the first with a waist chain?
With optimal waist chain. Hell yeah. So it does a little wiggle at the start because it's an instruction secondary. I think that wiggle's important at some later point. But yeah, alright, so debond, stranded, rebond. We're going to split it off in a slightly different way because we're going to isolate the Quicksilver. We're going to project and... Oh, look at that. Syrup is used a second time to isolate the gold. Isn't that lovely? Okay, so right, that wiggle that made no sense before, it now makes sense. Because the wiggle's actually to bond the waist chain. Like how it actually, in fact, uses syrup twice in the one solve. Oh.
It's just that good.
It's that good. And if you're watching this and you're playing through the journals, this is now a journal puzzle. You can find it under the name Reclaimed Gold, and these will be records for that journal puzzle. So if you want to take a crack at some of these records, you will claim a main game vanilla record. So this is RI, Rate with Instruction Secondary. This is a really cool solve.
Wow.
Oh, look at that, exact same instruction count. 33, right? That was... Hang on. That's hilarious. It's the exact same instruction count.
The power of having more arms.
Turns out the puzzle is equally as complicated if you're... whether or not you've restricted yourself to min cost or min rate, it is equally as complicated instruction-wise. Probably. Citation needed. Just, yeah. Don't think too hard about it. I'm right, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are we doing here? So we're... These two arms, these hex arms 1 and 2, they're grabbing at min rate, and we're also project... We're also doing... Is that more syrup?
I mean, it's kind of syrup.
No, that's...
Stranding it.
It pretty much is. But it's kind of different because now the two halves kind of get conjoined and arm 3 takes over from here in this very particularly designed 2 gold, 2 quicksilver, 2 iron setup. Because the idea, you split off the iron, project the iron, and because it's 2 gold, 2 quicksilver, you kind of just output the 2 gold and use those 2 quicksilver to get that copper up to gold. And then you rebond the gold back on, actually, because you've like... How's this look at the start? Ah, so you like rebond the gold back onto like a future one. So it won't actually like initially output at min rate. This is why RI is so cool. You can do you can do shit like this where you just feed it back into the loop and nothing collides. So the gold is fed back into the loop and it is conditionally handled by this one hex arm. Oh, it actually solves the puzzle before that happens. Cool solve. Very cool solve.
Nice.
All right, we have TI. And it goes down to it goes down to 7 instructions. This is cost optimal. There are 3 different actually. If you look at there are 3 different TI solves for the secondaries, but they're broadly similar takes on this. Like TI cycle secondary is just like that or whatever. But anyway, so more syrup. All right. Arm 2.
Oh my god.
Putting in its contender for pivot of the week. So pivot is important because the pivot is what helps handle that waist chain. Eventually gets it back over the bonder, and that's more syrup again, technically. Pivots onto the debonder, and individual atoms can pivot as much as they like, and that just solves the puzzle.
It's the same thing as cost, or the GI, except two arms are doing it with repetitive actions.
So the thing about syrup tech is that it was discovered on the puzzle Lustrous Syrup. Lustrous Syrup is a puzzle with that exact shape for the input. That is the Lustrous Syrup input shape. It is a Caltrops. Alright, so it's not the same shaped output, but the output was also smaller than the input. So the idea of this like Lustrous Syrup thing maps extremely well onto this puzzle. It's a small miracle it wasn't relevant for the metrics that RPO picked, because it's relevant. It feels like it's relevant for almost every other metric. This is the Sum 4 record. So it's actually also used for Sum 4. So this could have been used for Sum. It wasn't quite good enough to take the original Sum record.
See, that's the difference in Sum 4. You get track, and you can make a normal voice change. This is so close to TI.
So the Sum got recorded at 272. I don't know why I didn't turn this on during Sum, but yeah, this is the Sum score. It's that plus instructions, so 286 would have been Sum 4. So 14 instructions is insanely low. I think this would have been good enough for... So, if this was submitted in 2019, as is, Biggie's winning solve would have beat this by 1 point.
Wow.
So it would have been that close to winning, which is hilarious.
With a huge waist change.
Yeah, with the oh, that would have been completely against the point of the entire puzzle. All right. This is what, overlap rate? Yeah, this is overlap rate. This is a... Ah, here are the instructions.
Almost certainly made by Sergi Z. I'm not going to try to explain this.
Neither am I.
Viewer.
I suck at overlap. Our mate's cooking, don't worry.
Look at that cooking happening. These are all wand atoms, and now you make the output.
And
see, it's making the output there. That's what's happening here. That's some expert analysis.
The insane part is that with the halt instruction, you don't need to like... This would be a lot easier with the halt instruction, because you just halt R8 after it sets everything up.
Well, the nice part will be... so if you look at the actual instruction tape of like when the outer arms start, they have to have a lot of plus minuses there just to, Wait, is this epsilon actually? No, it can't be.
Is it what?
Is it epsilon? I don't think it actually is epsilon, but there's so much extra setup where you have to exchange between two wands.
No, it's not. No. What some clevers happened here. I don't think it is epsilon. I think this is actually like.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
You're exchanging between two wanding atoms that prevent that to happen, and the period's so long, not because of any technical reason, but because the setup's so long. So they can go back to this and fix the just use halt and have the exchange be much faster.
Yeah, because if you use halt, I don't think you need like whatever it does to like prevent the epsilon issue from happening. It's at this point, because the arms that have been plus minusing the whole time kind of like take a breather and the other arms have to take over so that it all like cleanly loops at min rate. You wouldn't have to do that anymore. Like those initial wiggle arms can just wiggle forever.
Yeah, so one solution very improved by halt.
Alright, and I believe this is our last solve, RG. Which is actually not that much more expensive than Panic Solve. I mean, not that much cheaper than Panic Solve.
It's reading what, 480?
Yeah, his was like 500, what, 510, I believe.
510, yeah.
Yes, this is only 30G cheaper than Panic's 24 cycle solve.
And it's probably mostly doing it with those hex arms there. Slow everything down, and life becomes easier.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about latency whatsoever, so you can just take it around a hex arm carousel or two. So,
41 cycles.
tough. I do like Arm 9 actually pinch hitting, outputting both pipelines. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's nice. Anyways,
And
I disagree with the Critelli placement though.
yeah, it's alright, Critelli. What do you reckon, like, that's an unused text, I believe.
I would put in with the hex arms, but
You gotta.
I know dense Critelli is old hat. It's not part of Critelli aesthetics anymore, but I would put it right in that center next to L9.
You know what? I respect this choice. I respect that choice. If it was me, I would have put it above the gold output. Because that's an unused hex, but at least we can both agree that it was not ideally placed at the start.
No.
sorry, whoever made this. I hope it was Goodbye Galaxy.
I reckon Goodbye Galaxy wouldn't have put it there. I reckon he puts it like... Oh, he would have done something avant-garde, like he would have put it there.
Hold on. My screen flickered.
Oh.
How dare you?
How dare our hypothetical version of
the Goodbye Galaxy that we made up in our heads. How dare he place it there?
How could you do this?
Alright. And that's all she wrote.
All right.
That was it's an awesome puzzle with a lot of cool ideas, both past, present, and maybe future, now that it's on the journal and we have a halt instruction that might play a part in further optimization. So yeah, no, anyway, this is a really fun one, actually. This is it's cool. Hopefully the video comes out pretty entertaining as well, because this was fun to record. Thank you once again, RPO, for joining me, and I'll catch you next week.
Yeah.